Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Euractiv event sponsored by the government of Kazakhstan. My name is Benjamin Fox. I'm a journalist and editor with Euractiv.com. Now, you can follow this debate on Twitter via the E8 Debates hashtag. And if you would like to ask questions and you're on the Euractiv events page, that function should be on the right hand of your computer screen. And now this Euractiv virtual conference will discuss how close relations between the EU and Kazakhstan can help the greening of the Kazakh economy and transport sector. Now, Kazakhstan has announced its plans to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, which means expanding the share of its renewables to 83% and phasing out the use of coal by 2050. Now, these are very ambitious plans for the world's 14th largest emitter of CO2 at present time. So the big question we will be asking, amongst others, is how Kazakhstan is going to get there. And we will start with the opening remarks from Ambassador Bayrokan Magulan, the Ambassador of Kazakhstan to Belgium. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for your initiative and support this idea to meet and discuss about I think the main topic of the agenda of around the world. In Kazakhstan, there is no exception. As you know, we pay attention more precisely if we are talking about the greener economy in Kazakhstan and how we can socialize with our European partners, also how we can establish new projects in this direction. Of course, there is many obstacles, there is many stands, but generally we know that it's necessary to activate our work in order to increase our cooperation with the European Union, how we can improve our green economy as a common our challenge. Dear friends, distinguished speakers, dear Mr. Fox, I'm pleased to join you today for this discussion on the green cooperation between Kazakhstan and the European Union. The green development and tackling climate change are of exceptional importance in our relation with the European Union. I'm honored to welcome our distinguished speakers also from Kazakhstan. I'm also thankful to Euractiv as our partner and its senior correspondent, Mr. Benjamin Fox, for hosting this event today. As you know, dear friends, a leading economy of Central Asia, Kazakhstan is taking bold steps towards transitioning to a green, sustainable, climate-friendly economy. We are expecting the country's GDP growth of 3.7% by the end of this year, with further increase in the following years. And as you know, we are the first CIS country to ratify the Paris Agreement in December 6, 2016. In December 2020, at the Climate Ambition Summit, President Tokayev announced an ambitious goal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, becoming the only country from our region to set the net zero objective. To that end, the government is finalizing its strategic document to provide the optimal pathway to the carbon neutrality by 2060. Well, under the Paris Agreement, Kazakhstan committed in its nationally determined contribution, NDC, to unconditionally reduce by 2030 its greenhouse gas emission by 15%. The Prime Minister Mamins participated in the 26th Conference of the Parties, COP26, once again demonstrates our strong commitment to the implementation of the global climate change agenda, which is crucial to set in place an urgent, effective, fair, and human transition to a global green economy. Actually, we are focused on defining nature-based solutions to reduce exposure to climate risks. And the first thing that it is to boost future carbon absorption and to combat desertification We intend to plant 2 billion trees across 500,000 hectares by 2025. As you know, throughout its history, Kazakhstan has been facing environmental and man-made tragedies. The RLC is one of the most devastating environmental disasters that affected about 35 million people living in sea basin. Unfortunately, the problem of disappearing of RLC is threatening both our region and the whole world, because the salt dust from the dried bottom of the RLC settles on snowy peaks and thus contributes to global warming. In order to improve the ecological situation on the dried seabed over the past 29 years, Kazakhstan already planted 195,000 hectares of saxaul trees, and in this basin of the drying sea. Of course, today we are working to increase the number of saxaul trees on drain bottom of the RLC, and plan to plant saxaul on 213,000 hectares by 2025, which is around the half of our plan. The second, it's renewable accounts today for 3% of the total energy balance. We have set a 2030 target of at least 15 of new renewable energy capacities. Hydropower has significant potential in Kazakhstan, so we expect this to include another 3,000 megawatts of new capacity by 2030. Well, the legal framework for sustained climate action is in place. A new environmental code was adopted earlier this year. The law includes assertive norms of the use of pro-climate technologies and a chapter of the adaptation. As you may see, when it comes to fighting climate change, Kazakhstan is working comprehensively on multiple fronts. We believe that this transition must become a vital engine of sustainable people-oriented development. Defense, Kazakhstan and the EU are on the same page with our ambitious green goals, and we must collaborate on launching new green projects, basically based on our simple principle of goodwill and win-win cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, taking this opportunity, I wish all of us an interesting and constructive discussion, exchange of views today, and I hope it will be useful for all sides, all the participants, and we can create something new in order to increase our bilateral, multilateral relations between Kazakhstan and EU in this direction. Thank you very much once again.
Many thanks, Ambassador. I just have one question. I mean, for example, I believe Kazakhstan will chair the next WTO ministerial meeting, which is due to take place next week. This will be the first WTO meeting since the COP26 summit in Glasgow. What will your government's priorities be at this meeting?
Well, yeah, indeed, we are expecting the upcoming meeting, MC12 in Geneva. Of course, during this whole time, Kazakhstan was really active in order to propose different approaches, how we can improve the WTO organization, particularly in different fields. I'm not a deep expert about the WTO topics, but indeed Kazakhstan would like to propose, consider different topics, including how we can improve the WTO organization. Of course, one of the topics will be about what this expectation as post-pandemic recovery of the economy and trade. It wasn't easy to solve this problem very fast. So I hope it could be good to discuss between politicians and international organizations how we can improve not only this organization, how we can improve our trade relationship globally. And of course, it's necessary to discuss and share some views how we can solve different problems, not only in particular our region, and we should consider all of our map around the world. So I hope it will be a good discussion. Thank you.
Our panelists with a couple of minutes each, please, and then after that we will move into the discussion debate part of this conference, followed by closing statements. So I'll start by introducing our distinguished panelists this morning. So we have Helen Gonar, who's the desk officer for Kazakhstan at the European External Action Service. Dimitris Dimitriadis, who's the president of the External Relations section at the European Economic and Social Committee. Urban Rashnak, who's the Secretary General of the International Energy Charter. He'll be followed by Zulfaya Suleymanova, who's a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defense and Security at the Parliament of Kazakhstan. And Kairat Tulebayev, who is the Vice Minister at the Ministry of Trade and Integration in the Republic of Kazakhstan. So I'll start by Helen, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you so much, Benjamin, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ambassador Baymukan. Very good to see you all here this morning. So just to start, well, it's an exciting week for EU-Kazakhstan bilateral relations. As you know, the President Tokayev is visiting Brussels this week on Thursday and Friday, and we're very excited that this is his first official visit to the EU and to Brussels, to Brussels especially. So in our bilateral relations with Kazakhstan, we have Kazakhstan was the first Central Asian country to sign an enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement with the EU. And we've seen since its implementation or its entry into force in 2020, indeed our relations are going from strength to strength. In particular, the EPCA is important because the implementation of the trade part of the EPCA will certainly help Kazakhstan to diversify its economy, which we know is incredibly important for a green economy moving forward to the future, and also to facilitate foreign investment. And despite the pandemic, I think it's important to say that the EU and Kazakhstan, we've maintained good cooperation, and all of our dialogues have taken place. So whether online or in person, we've managed to really maintain a good level of dialogue and cooperation. With Kazakhstan, we also have a high-level business platform, which has been very instrumental in helping EU investors and to address barriers to trade and to investment. And recently, there's even been important discussions in the framework of this business platform, on low carbon and green technologies, and also on sustainable agricultural and forestry. So I think that the discussion today is important, but it's not new. And the EU and Kazakhstan have been discussing these areas and looking for how we can build on the cooperation that we have to move forward. Of course, we have the momentum now of the COP26, which just took place in Glasgow, where Kazakhstan made very ambitious goals. Ambassador Baymukan has already raised these, of course, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. And the EU is very supportive, of course, to also work with Kazakhstan on achieving their goals. And we have our green agenda, but Kazakhstan also has its green agenda and is very committed to moving forward and to stepping up cooperation with the EU and European companies on low carbon and green technologies. And as we know, this is, of course, an area of huge potential. So that's on the bilateral level. Perhaps before I move to the regional level, just to mention also, of course, thinking ahead, we have the EPCA. In the framework of the EPCA, we now have the EU financial programming, which will be adopted by the end of the year for 2022 to 2027. And For Kazakhstan, we're hoping to have a multi-indicative program which will focus on a cooperation facility, and this will focus on two areas. So, to help the implementation of the EPC in two areas, so which is sustainable economic growth and rule of law. So I think this will also give a good boost to our cooperation in these areas. So on the regional level, I mentioned it was a busy week for EU-Kazakhstan relations, but it's also been a busy time for EU and Central Asia relations. We've just had the EU Central Asia Ministerial, which took place in Dushanbe on Monday, on the 22nd. So that was yesterday. And the HRVP, Joseph Borrell and Commissioner Urpilainen are in Dushanbe for the ministerial, and here it has been an opportunity for the EU as well to give its support to green and sustainable post-COVID recovery, and of course connectivity and digitalization are also very important areas of cooperation. We've also had the first ever EU Central Asia Economic Forum, which took place at the beginning of the month on the 5th of November, and which also had, of course, an important focus on green recovery, digitalization, and better business environment. And EU programming as well for the future, moving forward, 2021 to 2027, will also, of course, be very much focused on important areas of cooperation on the regionally as well, on energy, environment, climate, where we can expect, the programs that we've already in place to continue. And finally, I think what I just want to mention is that we also had an EU civil society forum, which Kazakhstan kindly hosted in October. And here, this was also focusing on green recovery following the COVID-19 and the important role civil society can play in developing this area of cooperation. So I think I will end here, but looking forward to the discussion, of course.
Many thanks, Helen. Dimitris, you have the floor.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Because I have very bad connection. I am in Izmir, and I am ready to start my trip to Brussels. Thank you for this invitation. It's really a very valuable moment to have this discussion about Kazakhstan, not only because it's a very important partner for EU, but because the last 20 days we have a lot of good news coming from the Commission about Central Asia in general. And I am thankful to the Euractiv for this invitation to be with you today. If I will lose you, I apologize from the beginning, but my connection is very bad. Some points from our side, from the European Economic and Social Committee. To be honest, we don't have a lot of opinions or a lot of activities in Central Asia. And it was not only our fault, but it is in general, a lack of activities in the whole region the last decade. But now I think that we start to understand how important is Central Asia and especially Kazakhstan for this debate. And coming now to this topic today, how can the EU help? EU has a lot of best practices, using a lot of best practices internally and externally. I will start first of all with the Green Deal. The Green Deal has a very particular part about Western Balkan and how the European Union will achieve some important policies in the Western Balkan, because of course it is very near to us. It's a neighborhood countries. We have very special interest for the region. But in these policies, we have some good examples and best practice that we can use also with Kazakhstan. Everybody knows that Kazakhstan is a big CO2 emitter, but in any case, we have a lot of good ideas how we can support Kazakhstan with best practices following a closer cooperation. In January this year, the European Parliament made a special resolution encouraging the Commission and us to create a global EU connectivity strategy as an extension of the Connecting Europe and Asia strategy, a very important step. But I think that Kazakhstan is a very important country for a lot of reasons. What it is important for Kazakhstan today, it is first of all as a transport hub to develop sustainable transport connections, and second, avoid to be impacted by the European carbon adjustment mechanism, as it is main exporters of metal and oil to the EU. The civil society organizations, they can play a crucial role to this debate for obvious reason, because we can work closer with the civil society organization in Kazakhstan to support, and because as EESC we have a big expertise about all green issues, green economy, green transition, and now we are working also and for the blue economy in Mediterranean. We have a lot of ideas about that. We have a progress via the investment facility for Central Asia, but it's not enough. To conclude, my opinion is that we must encourage Kazakhstan to come nearer to EU and EU to work closer to Kazakhstan and Central Asia, because as Europe is the front runner, thanks to the Green Deal, we can support them a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Demetrius. I think it's several points that we're going to certainly have to refer back to later in the discussion, particularly around the implementation of the border tax. Next to take the floor is Mr. Urban Rashnak. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this very timely event on how the European Union could help Kazakhstan on its road to the green transition. First of all, I would like to underline that Energy Charter Treaty, the only existing multilateral energy treaty where Kazakhstan and European Unions are both members. Energy is the most important element of the green economic transition of Kazakhstan. You had mentioned that Kazakhstan is the 13th biggest emitter of the CO2 right now. It's a country which made a remarkable progress in the last 30 years, the 30 years of independent Kazakhstan. It has to be kept in mind, and in many aspects of their evolution, take digitalization, human rights, or fighting poverty, they have a plenty things to share with the European Union. I would argue that in certain level, for example, digitalization, the level of services provided by the state to the citizens is much higher than many European countries. Regarding to the Energy Charter process, the Kazakhstan is active participation in it since the onset. It's one of the first countries which signed and ratified the ECT and participated in the Energy Charter Treaty negotiation back in 92-94, and is very active, one of them probably the most active member from the Central Asia in its ongoing modernization negotiations. It's not by coincidence, because Kazakhstan was chairing the Energy Charter Conference in 2014 and made a lot of efforts to put forward initiatives related to the transit, trade, energy efficiency, and dispute resolution mechanisms under the Energy Charter Treaty. It was also remarkable and very much linked to today's topic discussion, the efforts Kazakhstan made before and during the Expo 2017, which was focused on the energy of the future. It has to be said that since 2012 and 2013, Kazakhstan is making the steps and plans how to change their economy, how to change the energy, and to move towards a more sustainable and green future. It has to be mentioned, and I will echo Ambassador's word, that it's not the Kazakhstan is not only the country which made a lot of generates energy from fossil fuels, but also one of the countries which was most affected by the climate changes and the other human-made and human-induced environmental disasters. So they know not by communication, but they know by their own experience how important it is to maintain the road towards the green transformation. I think that we, in relation to the European Union, we have to maintain the basic fact. This communication should be two-way street. The European Union has to make sure that we will not slide into the patronizing countries, and especially Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is making all the best they can from the attempt to address the challenges related to the green economy are not coming from today or yesterday. There is almost a decade of efforts led by first President Nursultan Nazarbayev, and he first formulated a strategy of the transition to the new post-fossil fuel era. But also has to be said that not many countries have such a difficult starting point. And if you take into account the remarkable progress Kazakhstan made in the last 30 years, since its independence, I would argue that the challenge for the next 30 years to make the economy greener, to get gradually rid of the fossil fuels, is a project which is commensurable with the project of establishing a current modern and sovereign Kazakhstan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Urban. Zulfaya, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Dear distinguished panelists, friends, it is my great pleasure and honor to be part of today's discussion. I would like to actually briefly stop on Kazakhstan's efforts to greening its economy, as well as achieving carbon neutrality by 2060, as it was already mentioned by a couple of speakers, including His Excellency Ambassador Bermuhan. Last year in December, President Tokayev announced about Kazakhstan's pledge to become carbon neutral by 2060, which is very important for us. And this goal should be achieved through implementation of a very comprehensive set of mitigation actions. The roadmap to getting to our goal will be laid down within the doctrine on carbon neutrality, which is hopefully upcoming very soon. At the same time, I would like to also emphasize that since in 2013, we have adopted a concept on transitioning to a green economy. Last year, we have concluded the first phase of this important document, which was aimed at optimizing the natural resource use and consumption. This year, we have started the implementation of the second phase, which is basically aimed at structural transformations of the economy through increased efficiency of resources use, as well as the development of renewable and green technologies. How I see these two documents, that is the doctrine on carbon neutrality, as well as the concept on transition to a green economy, is that these two documents are complementary to one another, and they are aimed at maximizing our efforts, the effect of our efforts towards building a much greener economy. But at the same time, what I would like to also specifically emphasize is that one of the very powerful instruments to really sending the right signals and creating a favorable environment towards greening the economy is actually the legislation. Speaking of which, last year the Parliament has adopted a new environmental code. It was signed in the beginning of this year, and it entered into force in July this year. So we have a new environmental code, which is aimed at creating the incentives through introduction of both push and pull regulations. And it's a very big document. However, I would like to emphasize very briefly on several novelties that this new environmental legislation considers. The first one is in our environmental code, we have two big chapters which cover climate change. One is on climate change mitigation, and the second one is on climate change adaptation. Speaking of the mitigation, we basically embedded our NDC goal into our environmental code. So basically, our environmental legislation says that by 2030, Kazakhstan should reduce its carbon emissions by at least 15% of 1990 level. So, which means that it is now a legal requirement for us to reduce our carbon emissions. How we're going to do it? That is the second novelty. We have introduced a carbon budget. So the carbon budget is going to be developed in close consultations with all the stakeholders, and it is going to be designed. It will be an economy-wide carbon budget, and will be designed based on taking into consideration the goal on carbon emissions reduction. So it's going to be shrinking every year, thus creating the right, let's say, signals to the market players. The second, that might be not the novelty, but it's a very important instrument, is the emissions trading system. As you may know, in 2013, we have launched for the first time emissions trading system of Kazakhstan, and it has gone through several stages. And in new environmental code, it remains one of the important instruments for carbon emissions reductions. What is new about our ETS? Until this moment, until last year, we have been using a mixed method of quota distribution, that is grandfathering method as well as the benchmarking method. So from this year, we are moving towards a fully benchmarking method. What is the next step? The next step, we are considering to improve the benchmarks. So one of the let's say not stakeholders, but the examples that we are looking at is the European Union's emissions trading system. And I think this is one of the areas where we can definitely cooperate much closer, and which represent one of the areas for our enhanced cooperation. The third novelty of our environmental code is climate change adaptation chapter. As was mentioned by Mr. Urban Rusnak, indeed, Kazakhstan is already experiencing the effects of climate change. In the last 100 years, the temperature in our country has increased by almost 2 degrees. So, and we are already seeing the effects. Last year, I have climbed the glaciers in Tianshan Mountains, and this is when you actually realize what are the let's say the scales of climate change, because the glaciers are already melting. We have lost 1/3. For example, the Tuyuksu Lake Glacier has lost 1/3 of its volume and has retreated by over 1 kilometer. That is a lot. And we see our glaciers as water resources, reservoirs, natural reservoirs of water resources. So we are already seeing that the climate change is really happening in our country, and it is a question: how can we really improve the resilience? And when the climate change is happening, then we are seeing the loss and damage caused to our economy as well as the lost economic opportunities. So when we were designing our climate change adaptation chapter, we were thinking about how can we improve the coping capacity of our economy so that to reduce our vulnerability, so that to reduce the risk and the exposure of the economy and of the population to the effects of climate change, as well as how to reduce the loss and damage that is stemming from changing climate. So the adaptation chapter is one of the very important, I think, one of the important chapters of environmental code. And I think this is another area where we can definitely cooperate with the European Union very closely. We have identified that we have 4 key sectors which are the most vulnerable to climate change. That is water resources, agriculture, forestry, as well as human protection, that is reducing the risks of disasters. And I think we still have to see how this chapter is going to be implemented, but definitely this is a very important element. The fourth novelty is introduction of best available techniques. So as I said, the environmental code is actually aimed at creating the right incentives. So the best available techniques is one of the incentives for the companies. So it is either that the companies can be paying much increased payments for its emissions, let's say when it's polluting the atmosphere or releasing some substances into environment. If that happens, so then the penalties are going to increase by 2, 4, or 8 times. But at the same time, we give an option to companies to introduce best available techniques so that to reduce their impact on environment as well as on climate. So BATs we are going to be introduced starting from 2025. At the moment, we are having big discussions and we are developing the reference materials in very close consultations with the business, with the business and the private sector. And the fifth novelty is green finance and green technologies. In the last few years, we have seen the spur in demand for green solutions. It might be the civil society organization, might be just the citizens or small and medium enterprises. There are more and more people who are interested in introducing green solutions in their businesses, in what they are doing. And we realize that environmental code should really incentivize and should really create the right instruments for us to create right incentives for those people and for the population, for the businesses, to introduce greener options and greener solutions. So green finance and green technologies is another novelty that we have introduced in environmental code, and we are hoping that this the adoption of new environmental code would really help us to really move towards a much greener economy and really create this the paradigm shift in our thinking, in the way how we are seeing our future development. So I would like to really thank for organization of this conference and for the opportunity to share our thinking, but also hear from other distinguished panelists. And I really look forward to an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Many thanks, Zulfaya. We have the Vice Minister is having, I think, slight difficulties getting online, Mr. Tokayev. So I don't think he's going to join us for a few more minutes, in which case we will actually move on to the discussion part now. And then when he comes online, we'll obviously give the Vice Minister the floor to speak. So we'll open up to the first couple of questions. Now, there is this question about the EU's planned carbon border tax and the potential that this could hurt exports from the likes of Kazakhstan. How can these risks be mitigated, and how worried should Kazakhstan be about this new tax? Let's start with if Demetrius, then Zulfaya and Helen, if you could give quick comments on that. Demetrius? Or maybe let's move.
Sorry, I didn't understand well your question. Sorry, can you repeat it, please?
What is the risk posed by the EU's carbon border tax to Kazakhstan, and how can it be mitigated?
Look, I think that we have in the Green Deal some policies that we can pass to Kazakhstan, and I'm starting for some ideas that we have in the Green Deal for the future. But I'm not specialist about this question, about the emissions, the system emissions, because it's a very technical issue. I don't know if one of the panelists have more information or more experience than me.
Okay, Zulfaya or Helen? Zulfaya, would you like to come in? The microphone.
Hello?
Yep, we got you back.
Now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, we have been following the news about the introduction of carbon border adjustment mechanism in European Union. Kazakhstan's economy is, although we are a developing economy, unfortunately, we are very carbon intensive economy. So definitely we need to reduce our emissions. But what I would like to, I think, what comes into my mind is that when we are talking about carbon border adjustment, what is extremely important, I think many other countries might have phrased it, I'm not sure, is that we really need to also think about the different starting points in different countries. So Kazakhstan is carbon intensive, but we are quite open and quite interested in reducing our carbon footprint. Specifically, as I mentioned, we have an emissions trading system. I know that the European Union also has an emissions trading system. Of course, they are at the moment quite, well, let's say, not very much comparable. However, we are very keen and very interested to start aligning our emissions trading system with the European emissions trading system, which hopefully would create the right, let's say, policy environment for the companies who are potentially exporting, not potentially, but also exporting to European Union. At the moment, our ETS system covers approximately 46% of all carbon emissions in our country, which covers energy sector, I think mining. Well, there are 8 sectors. I don't remember all of them right now, but yeah, it's 8 sectors, and what we're looking at is really start thinking about how can we create a much more efficient ETS system, how can we align our ETS system with the European ETS system, and so that to make sure that our producers from Kazakhstan, they are not hit very badly by the CBAM of the European Union, but definitely I think we would need support, and we would definitely need a much closer collaboration with our European Union's partners, since this is a very technical, indeed, as was mentioned by the previous speaker, it is definitely a very technical issue. And I think this is one of the another areas which represent a prospective, let's say, area for cooperation between European Union and Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Helen, is that correct? That this is one of those, that there is potential for kind of bilateral cooperation between Kazakhstan and the EU to offset these any potential.
Firstly, sorry, Benjamin. Yes, firstly, I completely understand the emitters. This is such a technical area and beyond our competence. But of course, it would be our colleagues for DG Taxation and Customs Union, especially to reply. But what, of course, from the EES point of view, of course, we're aware of this CBAM, this carbon border adjustment mechanism proposed last July, and of course we understand completely this is the reasoning behind it, and it's I think it will prove to be a good instrument. I mean, it's so the whole idea is to put a carbon price on imports of a targeted selection of products. And from what I understand is, of course, as this previous speaker, Sofiva, mentioned, the EU will engage with Kazakhstan and with partners to explore possibilities for dialogue and cooperation with regard to the implementation of the specific elements of the CBAM. And what we understand, and the bottom line is that any decarbonisation efforts will pay off, and a carbon price paid, for example, in Kazakhstan, will be deducted from the CBM amounts. But of course, I'm not capable of going into the technical details of that. But I think what's important is that the EU will, of course, be having dialogues with partner countries, and there will be undoubtedly probably tailor-made. Specifically, according to each country, the dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. Urban, do you see this as an issue, and also the differing carbon emissions trading systems as kind of, is there a way that there can be some level of alignment between the different regimes?
Look, first of all, I think that now we have we will see another example of the extraterritorial effect of the EU legislation in making. So nobody knows yet how exactly this carbon border tax proposed last this summer will look like, and what will be the effect, what will be exactly the sectors affected, and what will the level of this tax. But I think the major logic of the mitigation or efforts in Kazakhstan should go in a simple way, as it was alluded by Helen. So the logic of and reason for this carbon tax adjustment is to mitigate or to make sure that the import to the European Union will be not have a more heavy carbon footprint in the source, the country of source, country of origin. So I think the process or the alignment should go in a way to address the carbon tax on the source. So I think that in this very particular question, the Kazakhstan should follow very closely the discussions in European Union, and then to try to find a way how to actually implement similar measures in Kazakhstan, because if the carbon has to be taxed, so it's better for Kazakhstan economy to be taxed back home, not on the European borders. But I could imagine that this will be a very fine calculation, and which will depend on the actual level of the tax and the dynamics behind it. So it's not a kind of a simple solution. One decision will fit all. Probably it will be different adjustment in different sectors, depending, as it was mentioned, on the very different starting point of Kazakhstan and European Union's economy.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from our online audience, which I'd like to put. I think it's primarily, first, I think for Zulfaya, which is Kazakhstan preparing and willing to do research on carbon capture, utilization, storage technology, and CO2 recycling? Is that something, Zulfaya, is that a question that you could come to?
Thank you very much for a very interesting question. Yes, definitely. So when we were developing our doctrine on carbon neutrality, it is still in progress. It is still being discussed. But one of the things which we understand is that we definitely need to introduce CCUS technologies. So there are several things which we are looking at. It's, first of all, of course, we need to reduce our carbon emissions from all sectors, starting from the energy sector, but also there will be certain amount of carbon emissions which cannot be reduced, so they should be, let's say, captured. So definitely carbon capture and storage technologies are one of the technologies that we are looking at. Well, at the moment, I'm not really in a position to say what is the status, but we are envisioning that as one of the options as one of the policy options. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm not sure that's a question that. Oh, sorry, Dimitris, do you want to come in on that? I can't hear you. Can you the microphone? We lost sound.
You don't hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Yep. Oh no. That is. Okay.
Do you hear me now?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Sorry for that. I would like to add something. In the meantime, the Commission is preparing the new strategy on international energy engagement. It's a big strategy for the whole world. After the adoption of this strategy, most probably EU will start negotiations with Kazakhstan to develop its emission trading system. Just for your information.
Okay. Many thanks. Many thanks. Does anybody else want to come in on that point, or shall I move on? I think I'll move on. Another question is several of you have raised this is question of climate change adaptation and also green finance. Is this? I mean, what programs are there available and likely that that Kazakhstan can tap into, for example? Helen?
Thank you, Benjamin. Of course, this is definitely the area for my colleagues in DG INPA, International Partnerships. But of course, that I mean, in the past, EU programming on a regional basis has very much focused on energy, climate, water, environment, all the subjects that we're discussing. You know, the high stake issues, and we can expect, of course, that this will continue in the new programming, which should be adopted by the end of the year. And I think that the EU is very conscious, of course, and we're taking this regional approach because of course the issues on climate and environment, they're cross-cutting and they don't stop at borders. So this is this will very much, I think, continue. And there will be I think a conference on water next year in Dushanbe. There'll be many regional events taking place that we can watch out for. So this will be very much top priority and high on the agenda for sure.
Thank you. Zulfaya?
Yes. Well, I think this is a question that should be probably asked from the representative of the European Union, since this is we're talking about the programs of the European Union. But speaking of the adaptation, as I mentioned, we have in environmental code, we have identified several areas which are the most vulnerable to climate change. So, which is agriculture, water resources, forestry, and disaster risk reduction, human protecting people from disasters. So, as Helen already mentioned, the programs are already covering water, climate, water, and energy issues. I think these are very much important. But as I said, we have these 4 priority areas. They are definitely cross-cutting. They are definitely very much interlinked with one another. So I think when we are thinking about programs, they should be not only transboundary, but also very systemic in terms of they should be really, connecting different dots in different sectors to make sure that we are maximizing the effect of those programs. So that would be probably a wish. So since I'm not really in a position to to speak for the European Union, but yeah, that would be a wish probably. Yeah, thank you.
Many thanks, Zulfaya. I believe we have our Vice Minister, Mr. Tulebayev, has joined us online, although I don't think any of us can see him. Vice Minister, are you online? It appears not yet, unless there are more technical difficulties. In which case, just a question for Urban. How do you see the role of the Energy Charter Treaty? What do you think the role of that treaty will be in the coming years in terms of building these synergies between, for example, Kazakhstan and the European Union in terms of legal frameworks?
Thank you very much for this question. I think, as you may know, we are now undergoing the one-in-generation overhaul of the Energy Charter Treaty, and the negotiations are going on. I think that I will not reveal any secret that the negotiating partners, the contracting parties, including the European Union, are trying to adapt the Energy Charter Treaty to the new situation, including the climate emergency and the way how the Energy Charter Treaty could protect in the future energy investment. Having said that, Energy Charter Treaty is already protecting all sorts of investment, including renewables, which are very helpful in providing the instruments for tackling the problems of energy transition. I expect that the negotiation on the ECT modernization will be concluded by summer next year, and the new version of the ECT will be better adapted to the new challenges of the next, let's say, 20, 30 years. On the practical terms, the Energy Charter process provides a lot of opportunities for European Union to cooperate with other Energy Charter Treaty contracting parties, including Kazakhstan, or for the sake of the region, for all other Central Asian countries are members of the Energy Charter Treaty. We as a Secretariat, we are very keen to provide technical assistance, and we do actually providing additional assistance to the countries from the region. And I think that the main instrument to be used in this framework are the in-depth energy efficiency reviews, because energy efficiency is notorically known that is one of the most, what to say, the weakness point of the extensive energy development in this part of the world. And I strongly believe that more active support from European Union in the field of improving energy efficiency would pay very much off for everybody involved, for Kazakhstan on the first place, but for European Union as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll make another. I think we have the Vice Minister, Mr. Kazakh Tokayev. Good morning, sir. How are you? And would you like to? You have the floor.
Well, thank you. I just joined, so apparently I'm not aware what the discussions prior to my joining the discussions. So I just want to know to say that the climate change and the CO2 neutrality is on top of agenda of Kazakhstan. And as the Deputy Minister of Trade, who is responsible for promotion of exports, I'm definitely interested how the landscape of international trade will change, since there will be additional requirements on top of the other obstacles we are facing. Kazakhstan is the biggest landlocked country, and we have abundance of resources. Therefore, it's very difficult for us to overcome these two, since we have to request other countries to pass, and we have cheap resources not too used to. Nevertheless, the President of Kazakhstan has already issued the goal. He said the goal in 2060 we will go carbon neutral, and therefore we are making a large-scale economic and technological reforms, and this will definitely come at a cost. And we are looking forward for cooperation in this perspective with other countries, and including European Union, to overcome these difficulties. So in general, our carbon neutrality consists of two basic doctrines. First is a basic scenario that provides for development without measures to decarbonize the economy. At the same time, Kazakhstan's economy grow will slow down due to the factors such as imposition of border, carbon tax, low energy, and so on. So the second scenario is carbon neutrality, which we are looking for by 2060, and the draft doctrine declares the goal which consists of 6 main sectors generating CO2 emissions, that is energy industry, agriculture, forestry, other types of land use, transportation, housing, communication, etc., waste management, and etc. These measures will reduce the expected damage by more than twofolds, and it's expected that most of the emissions will be avoided. So in short, this is the message I wanted to share with you. If you have some questions, I'm ready to answer prior to my flight, which will be like in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I do actually have one I'll start you off with a quick question, which we have from our audience, which is from Philip Urban, who says, will green bonds be issued in Kazakhstan?
Well, I think it is the question which should be addressed to Ministry of Environment and Ministry. So it's their sphere of their responsibility. However, I think it's a good idea. It might be a good idea for us as the Ministry of Trade. I think there is some margins for cooperation.
Okay. And actually, I'll follow it up with another one from the audience. Who this is directed towards primarily towards Helen. Who's the question is, what is on the plate for Central Asia and specifically Kazakhstan on green infrastructure solutions within the EU's Global Gateways strategy? Don't know if that's something you could have a crack at, Helen.
That again would be for more the Commission colleagues, but it's important. It's a really good question, actually, and of course we're discussing this as well in our external relations and in our bilateral relations with Kazakhstan. And I think it's important to know that this is really high on the agenda, connectivity. And I just wanted actually to touch upon this point before the discussion would close, that green and sustainable connectivity, and on both sides, on the EU side and on the side of Kazakhstan, but also intra-regional cooperation is, I think everyone sees this now as an extremely important and a high priority. Again, it's nothing new. We've been doing connectivity, of course, connectivity for the EU is in the broad sense, it's the people, it's energy, it's transport, it's also digitalization. And we've been doing these projects, of course, bilaterally and also regionally. But I think there'll be, with the new global strategy that was adopted, I think on the 17th of November, there'll be even a bigger impetus and energy to do more, maybe regionally and intra-regionally, so between the countries of Central Asia themselves. And I think we can definitely expect, no surprises that this will be very much as well part of the priorities moving forward for 2021-2027. So the new programming, multi-indicative programming. So yes, so important and very relevant question, and I think that this is something that everyone agrees on, all the EU and Kazakhstan and also the other Central Asian countries, that this is a real priority. And again, as we've heard several times today, that Kazakhstan being the largest landlocked country, and the importance of transport, railway transport, and just finding new possibilities and new areas of cooperation, but that looks at the big picture, which is why the EU put such an emphasis on sustainable and green connectivity.
Thanks, Helen. And just to kind of, I guess one of the themes that I think keeps coming together in this discussion is this, that there are this multitude of legal frameworks, of different pieces of legislation, different reform programs, whether it's with the COP or the EU's Green Deal and Kazakhstan's own green reform program. How important is it to have alignment and bilateral cooperation in terms of ensuring alignment between these different legal structures? Zulfaya, and perhaps then Urban.
Thank you. This is a very interesting question. If I may, I actually would like to comment on the very previous question that was asked from Vice Minister on green bonds, if I may. As I said, in environmental code, we have we have introduced green finance. I mean, as an instrument, we have introduced this the regulations for green financing, for the development of green finances, and the green bonds have already been launched in a pilot project, as far as I know, in Astana International Financial Center. They have green finance center, I guess that's the name. So they already have launched the very first and the very pilot green bonds, and we are hoping that and hopefully this initiative would further find its development. Answering your question about alignment between different legislations, I think what is extremely important, I mean, we really have to think about what is the very the goal of all these policies and legislations. And I think where we need to find the alignment, where the alignment is the most important, if we can align the goals. So where are we heading to? Where are we going? Where do we want to get to? So we want to make sure that we are moving in a green direction, that we have less impact on climate and on environment, that we actually cooperate in doing so, and that we are together reaching this big the big goal for which were set in Paris Agreement and other international frameworks like Sustainable Development, 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, and so on. So it is about the goal, and we need to really align our actions based on the goal and based on the destination that we want to reach. So I think this is where alignment has to go. And in terms of the documents, they are the program documents. And I think this alignment, it should be following our intention of our vision of the ultimate goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Boban.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I think we should distinguish two sort of alignments. One is the hard, so-called legally binding alignment. I think this is what we are witnessing now in the Energy Charter Treaty modernization process. Here, the both European Union and Kazakhstan, plus 50 more other partners, are working hard to align their legally binding provisions of the Energy Charter Treaty to serve better the goals stated and to serve better the community of contracting parties to meet their ambitions in fighting climate change, in ensuring the green recovery and green growth. The second very important alignment is a soft alignment. EU has an enormous soft power. By setting its own trade rules and trade limitations, it of course affecting all its trading partners. More the country is aligned or is trading with European Union, more the country is affected. Of course, this is not a kind of universal instrument, but for a country like Kazakhstan, there are a lot of incentives to go along with the European Union, especially with those sectors where there is important market for Kazakhstan's products on the European side. So I think here I would echo what Zofia just said. There is an interest on both sides to align, but it will be somehow taken on the pragmatic approach. There is clear that there is a global effort to go in one direction. Nobody is questioning this. However, on the particular side, and of course, as always, the devil's in details. Here, I think we will see kind of pragmatic and selective alignment with those industries, those sectors which are which have a potential to be most affected by European decisions. I think this is a natural process, and I think this, as in the case that Kazakhstan will trade more with European Union and the ties will get closer and closer, the influence of the European soft power over Kazakhstan and other partners will only grow. In case that the trajectory will be different and Kazakhstan will be, for whatever reason, decoupling from European markets, and this also could happen, in the future if those requirements will be too harsh or simply will not fit into the Kazakhstan development model, and the country will be pushed beyond what is perceived as acceptable. This could be a different process. Then Kazakhstan will not align on those soft alignment because they will look for the other markets on a particular sectors of their economy. Thank you.
Helen, do you think, I guess, firstly, what is there scope for close alignment, on legal frameworks between Kazakhstan and the EU? And do you also accept that there may be a risk, as Urban says, that if the EU pushes too hard on from its side, that this may in turn push Kazakhstan away from the EU?
I think in general, from my experience of our bilateral dialogues with Kazakhstan, is that we're always naturally looking for alignment between our strategies and our policies, and we're working together on this. And maybe just to give you a concrete example, when the EU was drafting its EU strategy on Central Asia in 2019, it was adopted in 2019. The work started way before the adoption in 2019, and the EU reached out to all its partners and for their input, and of course this is so that we can align as much as possible that the EU has its priorities, and in this case its work program, and these priorities are known. And I think there's really, we're seeing this all the time. There's it's in, I think, in the interests of everyone to align to some priorities. I mean, we're not going to achieve everything, but we know what the big important goals are and where the stakes are high. So I see more cooperation than, and I think maybe even greater sort of willingness to share knowledge, and this is again nothing new, of course, but I would say even when we're talking about green technologies and low carbon technology, I think we'll be seeing greater cooperation between the EU and Kazakhstan, and European companies and Kazakh companies in these areas, for example. I think that the EU is, when it comes to standards and everything, it is seen as an example, as a good example, and a one to follow, and I think that that this is happening, really happening, and I think I'm trying to find other examples, but definitely exactly the programming as well. The EU financial programming. Of course, we now have this EU strategy for Central Asia, which was adopted in 2019, and then the programming, the EU programming for the region for 2021, 2027, of course, is based on the framework and the priorities within the EU strategy. So I think that we're naturally going towards closer alignment, and I mean, I think if there's one thing perhaps that this pandemic has shown us, is that how we are all so connected, and that it's in the interests of all of us to try, and especially we have the SDGs as well. These are not EU goals, they're universal, they're global. So I think that these frameworks are all helping us to cooperate much closely together in general.
Thank you, Helen. I think that this, the theme of closer cooperation is going to be at the heart of EU-Kazakhstan, the relationship between EU and Kazakhstan on this matter. I'm very conscious of time. We have a few seconds. If anybody would like to give a quick closing statement before we wrap up. If anybody would like to, Zulfaya, if you would like to give a very quick roundup, or we'll go straight.
Sure. I actually would like to thank all the speakers. It was, I think, a very interesting discussion, and was really showing different the perspective of the European Union and also of Kazakhstan. I think we had a very interesting exchange, which we can use in future and in our future work. Thank you very much to Euractiv for organization of this discussion and of this conference. And I would like to wish everyone to be healthy, to stay healthy, and all the best. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thanks very much. And yes, same message from here as well. Thank you for being here, and stay happy and stay safe. And so many thanks this morning to Helen Gornard, to Dimitris Dimitriadis, who's had, I think, slight technical details at the airport, as well as the Vice Minister, Mr. Tulebayev. And thank you to Zulfaya Selimanova and Oban Rashniak. And have a lovely day. Thank you.